Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm going to be looking at the New Universe. Before I get started, let me talk about some of my background with the New Universe. I have never read any of this until now. It happened a couple of years before I got into collecting comics. Maybe some of the titles were finishing up around that time, but I didn't read them. Now, as an early collector, I was going backwards and collecting some recent back issues of titles I was reading. I would see ads with this like lightning bolt on it, the New Universe. So I had an idea of like, oh, there was this other thing, but I never saw it around really until later. I would run across it in dollar boxes and so forth. And it was always one of those things I kind of wanted to look into. Just never really made the time for it, and at least as far as I know, they haven't been collected in any forms. Maybe they have more recently, but I'm not quite sure of that. I was on Instagram. A friend of mine on there had posted on Saturday when people show their sets off. He showed some, and I just casually mentioned that I've always wanted to read some. And he was like, "Hey, I have a extra set of 1 through 5 of all the titles." And he sent them to me as a gift. And I thought that was pretty awesome of him. So I'm making a point to get them read. I've really weighed between reading like each issue one at a time, or each title, like the number ones and then the number twos and then the number threes. Then I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to read 1 through 5 of each title. But I'm going to start with this Star Brand because it had this October date, this one, and Spitfire, I believe it's called. Both came out a month before the other titles did. So I decided I would start with those two. But today I'm just going to look at the first 5 issues of Star Brand. So if you don't know what the New Universe really was, it was an aside to the Marvel Universe, originally pitched by Jim Shooter to his bosses. He wanted to end the Marvel Universe completely, like just wrap up all the stories, supposedly give all the creators a payout and start something fresh and new with a whole new universe and make it a little bit more grounded and realistic, to a degree. I guess more sci-fi oriented in a very 80s way. Now that clearly did not pan out the way he thought it would. So instead of ending the other issues, he still started this aside thing. And I'm sure he thought he had high hopes for this kind of becoming more of like the popular thing and then eventually phasing out the traditional Marvel universe that we all know and love and is a multi-billion-dollar business today. So maybe not the brightest idea Jim Shooter ever had, but starting up like a separate aside universe and seeing how it goes, hey, give it a shot, see what happens. This one, Star Brand, on this first issue, you see him lifting that card there, but that's not even really how it... That's just kind of like an introduction. So you've got art. Jim Shooter is the scripter. John Romita Jr. as the penciler and Al Williamson inking. So you've got a pretty good team here. Jim Shooter traditionally is a pretty good writer. I've usually liked a lot of his stuff, particularly later in the Valiant era. He wrote Secret Wars. He's written many things over the years. So you would think this is going to be something that would start off and have a nice tight continuity universe, which is more so than the Marvel universe really had. While yes, Stan and Jack crossed over books and there was some continuity, like the Kirby books particularly had tight continuity. Spider-Man was kind of onto the side, but he would appear in other books unless it was him and Doctor Strange by Ditko. But there wasn't really planned or preconceived tight continuity between those early titles. And it really didn't get super tight until Jim Shooter took over the Marvel Universe, I would say. The 80s, I feel like, had a much tighter, stricter continuity between titles than the Silver and Bronze Age really did. So you've got the idea of Shooter wanting to have that in this. And these first 5 issues mostly stand alone, I would say, for this. And I haven't read the others yet, so this is the first. I'll see how that develops in the other books as it goes along. But you got this interesting shot here. You've got this character who he does have a very bland, nondescript costume. I would say that's pretty boring. I would say this cover is kind of like, okay, that might get your attention. You've got a guy flying over the earth. Okay, he's got some kind of flying superpower, right? Star Brand sounds kind of cool. Very 80s design here. I could see how this first issue would be appealing at the beginning. Got a guy holding up a train. All right, we know he's going to have super strength. But then it flashes back. He's just a guy out on like a dirt bike, riding around, finds this old man in this area of the field that was kind of burnt up a little bit. And he starts talking to him, and the old man is very cryptic and essentially tells him that he's been chosen, that his life is coming to an end. He's about out of energy, and he wants to pass off this thing. He tells him to gaze into his eyes, and he shows him this tattoo-looking thing. He puts it on the palm of his hand. He's like, "Don't worry, you can move it later." And then he kind of blacks out. And when he wakes up, he's alone. So then he goes around looking. Oh, look, he finds the alien. This is very Green Lantern-like origin right here. Very Green Lantern-like. So he finds the alien there, and he decides, I'm going to put him in this cave and like kind of bury him for now. Then he figures out he can fly really quick. Gets on his motorcycle and goes home. So now he's just kind of testing out his powers and stuff. And it is pretty interesting. A lot of this is like just him thinking like, oh, I've got this power. What am I going to do with this power? And I guess you could say it is more grounded and realistic. It takes place in Pittsburgh. I believe that's where Jim Shooter's from. He goes and visits a friend whose name is Myron. Don't really know anything about him yet. He's got this bent up bike. And he's trying to, this character's name, by the way, his name is Ken Connell. He goes to visit his friend Myron. He's like he's apparently a junk collector to some degree. And he's found this junk bike. Well, Ken just picks it up and bends it into shape. So he's showing his friend Myron here his powers. And while they're chatting, all of a sudden, they're attacked by this alien. So got some pretty good action right here coming. So they're being attacked. Clearly, this alien wants something to do with this tattoo, the Star Brand. They fly out. Ken takes him to this railroad area. They kind of have a little bit of a battle. He's kind of getting overwhelmed until he uses this power, which he doesn't know how to use. And this alien at the same time is saying, that old man you met, you don't know what he gave you. He was the bad guy. We're the good guys. We need that. To stop other bad things. So there's a little confusion here about like who the old man was and what they're going to do, what his motivations really were. Was he a good guy fighting bad guys? Are these aliens really the good guys? There's some good confusion and plot mystery there to keep you intrigued. So he basically sets off almost like a mini nuclear missile or bomb goes off from his power. And the alien's kind of gone. So then we get back. There's his buddy Myron again. We get back to, he goes and visits this girl, Debbie. He calls her Debbie Duck, or he calls her Duck, and they quack at each other, and it's pretty annoying. But you can see she's all into him. And he's like, thanks for, looking out for me and everything. I guess they work together because she says she's going to tell the boss that he's calling in sick. Now, he hasn't told her that he has powers. But he wants to go back and investigate the crash site again where he met the old man. And he finds his very bland brown suit. Now we find out he's also got a girlfriend. And the girlfriend has 2 kids. So we're getting more of a sense that he's a little older. He's at least in his 20s. They're relaxing. They hear a scream. They go up check on the girl. The girl has a gun like what that alien had. So he, bugs out. She doesn't understand what's going on. he goes home. He talks to his friend. His friend says, like, basically the government's questioning me about what's going on. Here's Debbie again coming around, and she's just like she just fawns over him, and he lets her in a way, but he's also involved with her, and she knows about her. So that part it gets stranger as it goes along with their relationship. All right, here's the new universe ad I used to see in other comics that you were always like, "Ooh, what's that?" Big Bang. So she sees the gun, and he kind of runs her off, but he'll give her like pecks on the cheek and stuff here. Then we find out he works at an auto shop, and everybody is always building him up. He's pretty bright kid, shouldn't be doing what he's doing, needs to do more with his life, and you get a sense that he's conflicted with his life too. He does seem like a pretty bright guy, pretty morally adjusted, wants to do the right thing with this power, but really doesn't know what he's going to do. He dons his suit here. He goes out to confront the alien again and basically kicks its butt. Some pretty decent artwork here by Romita Jr. We've got pretty fun stuff, some action happening, and this is pretty action packed. And I could see this being very intriguing, other than the costume being very dull and boring. But so issue 1 it has a good start, really good start in issue 1. It had me go straight into the second issue. I didn't really waste any time. I finished that issue and I went straight into this one. Taking Charge. Still got John Romita Jr. on art. He's just pretty much exploring his powers. There's a weird scene here where he goes to check in on his girlfriend with the kids, and she's starting to undress, and he's like, "Oh, I shouldn't be watching this." And so he leaves. He doesn't just sit there and peeping Tom on her. Here we are back again with his friend Debbie Duck, where they quack at each other, and it's really dumb. He keeps Barb kind of hanging. They go to see his buddy Myron again, who apparently is a therapist and is having a big group therapy session. And he kind of tricked Ken into coming to it to listen to what they have to say. And he's asking them, the group people, if they had this awesome power, what would they do with it? Just so he can listen to it. Well, he gets kind of offended. And he bugs out again. And then he goes ahead and shows Debbie what he can do. And she said, "Gosh." So they play her up like she's not very bright. They go home, and now she's in a robe, and I didn't catch on to that the first time around. And she's talking about, like, maybe you could do something to help. I think there's like a boat, like a cruise ship. Oh, no, there was a boy in a well. That's right. There was a boy stuck down in like a well or something. And she's like, maybe you could do to help something. He's like, maybe I can. So here he is thinking, and I thought this was a pretty cool touch. He has a map, because when he flies up, he's not really sure where he is when he goes up. And in fact, earlier on, right here, when he was coming down, he's like, "Oh, I don't know where I am." So he kind of came back down until he found the river and followed it back to Pittsburgh. So I thought that was a neat touch. So the next time he brings a map, and he's like trying to read a map from up in the air. He sees like all the commotion going down, lands in the woods, and then he goes through all of this like thinking about what he should do. How should I help this kid? Should I just fly in there? It's like everybody will be wanting a piece of him. He's like, I need to save the kid. So then he comes up with this bright idea. He's like, what if I just tunnel down and dig underneath? And he starts to, and he talks about how it's like almost like swimming through the dirt. But all of a sudden, this robot shows up. And so that's from another title, which I haven't read yet, and it launched at the same time as this, Spitfire. Kind of an Iron Man riff. Kind of bland. When you compare that to Iron Man, you're like, which would you rather read? This red, kind of bland robot, or Iron Man? And I was never even a big Iron Man fan at the time, but like, that's bland. again. So the robot comes down, saves the kid. He's kind of like, oh, wow, what was that all about? And he decides to follow it back. He sees this girl crawling out, and he's always like, redhead, nice body. And that's like a recurring theme of this book. He's always like oogling the women. Oh yeah. Back at the group therapy thing, he met an ex-girlfriend that also has a kid, and she was saying that the kid missed him because he was almost like a father to her. So I was also like, oh, he has a thing for women that have children already. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on with him and his relationships with the women in this book. So he has one girlfriend, which is like his serious girlfriend, that has two kids. He has an ex-girlfriend that has a kid. And then he's got this Debbie girl that hangs around. You think they're just friends at first, but as you go on, they're more. They're more than that. So he calls her up to kind of say, hey, you're right. I should have called to check in on the kid. I've just got a lot going on. Okay, so now he sees the boat. So now there's a boat with terrorists on it. Middle Eastern terrorists, big thing here in 1986 when this came out. Yep, 1986. So he goes to this boat. He's not really sure again what to do, and I find out that pretty compelling, is that he's not quite sure what to do once he gets there. He's like, okay, should I just charge in, but then that'll set him off? When they have a bomb of some sort, they could detonate the bomb if they know they're being attacked. But he decides to kind of like stealthily take them out one at a time until he can get in here. And he gets there to the front end of the boat. There's their bomb. I think this is where he decides to start powering up to take it. But then all of a sudden, he's thinking like, okay, what if I let the bomb go off and I can take the other half of the boat? If I can confine it to one side of the boat and the other half, I could lift it up and just carry it away. But he also thinks like, well, what else would happen? Like, would the boat crumble apart if I tried to lift it up? And then still half the people on the boat die. So a lot of inner turmoil and questioning about what to do. Like, you've got this awesome power. You're not quite sure how to use it, what to do with it. What happens if you do just use it without thinking? And, that to me was very interesting about the series. But all of a sudden, this like SEAL Team 6 comes in, starts blasting away at the Middle Eastern terrorists. But the bomb did get detonated. They just throw it overboard, hoping for the best. They're like, no way, it's still going to like capsize the boat. But he jumps in with it and just takes it all the way to the bottom of the ocean. And this bomb blows up. He's still down there, and he survives it. So he's pretty amazed by that. Then he decides to go and see the people with the robot again, the Spitfire crew. Has a pretty interesting interaction with them, like kind of like, hey, I saw what you did. I'm watching you. I kind of want to be with you, but I'm also watching you at the same time. They're like, where do you think you're going? And he just bends that bar. It's like, yeah, I'll see you around. And they're like, oh gosh. So again, first two issues, pretty solid story going on so far. I liked those first two issues. Issue 3, I think the art changed here. We'll find out in a second. Okay, issue 3. Basically, still kind of there's some recap going on here. We meet a few more of his co-workers. Again, they build him up like, you're a smart guy. You shouldn't even be in here detailing cars and stuff. He goes to visit his buddy Myron again. Myron has another patient come in and they're talking, and the guy was maybe eavesdropping on him. being a little careless with what's going on. Now we really start exploring his powers. He just flies up and flies all the way to the moon. And he says he goes to like what would be called the dark side of the moon, but I guess it had light. It must have been facing the sun at that point. So he's on the other side of the moon, not facing Earth. And he levels a mountain just to see what the power can do. He takes his clothes off first because he didn't want to incinerate his clothes. And then he puts them back on. So, I mean, he's pretty powerful. He flew to the moon. And then he decides to go out even further. He goes way into space before returning home. And then he comes in and has an encounter with some communists in Afghanistan when the communists were invading Afghanistan. So you have some real world geopolitical stuff definitely happening in the background here. Here's Debbie Duck again. She knows the secret. She comes in. They're looking at the paper and they see something in the classifieds for "Flying man, I saw you. Please come out." So he does go out and he sees this girl, and again he's like, "She looks Mideastern. Not bad. Tiny waist." So again, he's like, "Oogle of the women," and I just found that kind of like oddly creepy for this character they're trying to build up. I guess that's showing him where he still has some immaturity about him. He kind of keeps his distance. She says that she has a boyfriend, that, you know, they're watching, and her life's in danger if he doesn't come out. He's kind of like, "No, I don't believe you." He goes to visit Barb. They go on a date. She's got a babysitter. That's nice. Looking at the babysitter. They go out to dinner. The waitress comes around. She's like, "Wow, she's a knockout. What a cute figure." "The hostess?" "I guess so." "How about the babysitter?" "Don't miss much, do you?" Okay. I couldn't help but look. I'm sorry." Don't be. She's gorgeous, but remember, she's only 17. So it's like calling him out for like looking at it. And then she is 17. And that isn't the end of that. It comes back. In fact, he walks her home. He comes back, and here's his girlfriend throwing herself at him again. The main girlfriend. And he's like, "I gotta go." Like, they're talking about something at dinner, you know, where she's like, "You're a good person, and I know you want to do the right thing." And he's kind of like, "You're right. So I have to leave and go see this other girl again who said her life was in danger." So he goes there, and it looks like she's in the car, like she has a bruise on her face, and he rips the door off. Looks like a bruise, but then he's looking closer. He's like, "That's not a bruise. It looks like makeup." And he's like, "She's looking at she's studying my face." And she shoots him to see if he's invulnerable. And he flies off. He's like, "Stupid idiot, sooner or later, you are ours." He's like, "Great, just great." He comes home and there's Debbie. She like does his laundry and stuff. I think that might have been even up here. Before he goes on the date, he's like, "I've got a date. Will you do my laundry?" And she does it. Good, Doug. Don't forget to take the spare key so you can come in tomorrow night. Yeah, to do his laundry. So she like comes in to do his laundry, and just like, hey, and you can see she's like all about him. So still pretty decent. Got some mystery building with this woman that put in the classified ads. This was not Romita Jr. Where was the? I want to say it was Alan Saviak. Oh, here we go. Alex Saviak was the penciler for this one. So Vince Coletta on inker. It's pretty solid, but you can tell the difference between this and John Romita Jr. Here we go, number 4. Back to John Romita Jr. He just took N.L. Williamson. they got an issue off. He got his buddy Myron testing out his power. They're determining that his power can be turned on and off, though. As long as he's thinking about it, like keeping a protective shield up, he's okay. But he can let the shield down. We get a recap of the whole like meeting the man in the mountains. Basically, the first issue recap there. Because Myron's roommate walks in and see he's got all this junk. He's a junk collector. He's a psychiatrist and a junk collector. And he wants to make an appointment to really like just go over this with Ken. Ken's back at work. He's kind of behind. He's using his powers to like fix bumpers and stuff. Carry up bags behind his co-worker's back. So this is where we can figure out like he can turn it all on and off. So the barber's like, what is this? Why won't these scissors cut? And then he's like, oh, I gotta drop my protective shield. And then they clip it away. Okay, I guess he was going to take Debbie or Duck out to dinner. Man, I hate it when they quack at each other. It's so annoying. It's so annoying when they quack. He got her a toy from Disneyland. Flew there to get it. Of course, she's impressed. They come back to his place. And here, they obviously have sex. They're fooling around. Yeek. And then he's like, so you get Beak of the Week award. She's just in like a little tank top and panties, sitting on his bike, taking pictures of her. And they're like kissing and stuff. So it's like, what is going on with this dude and this girl? And then he's got this girl who's like serious and wants him to marry and stuff. She actually comes over. Duck slips out because she's just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's no problem. You can have other girlfriends as long as I get to be with you, too. Here's where he finally moves the Star Brand to his side. He thinks she saw the picture, and he's just like, what am I doing? He's like, I'm a terrible person. He's like, I'm not committing to her. I'm leading Debbie on. He goes to see his buddy. They talk more about the power. His buddy's almost planting seeds of doubt in his head too. Like, are you sure you even saw an old man? You were hypnotized and stuff. And then he wants to charge him $50. Like, I don't have $50. So his buddy makes him work off his therapy session. And that pretty much irritates him. He's like, forget him. I'm never going back. I'm probably never going to talk to him again. And he thinks like, maybe I should go to the White House and like tell the president who I am and my power and stuff and see what happens. And again, it's kind of like on the ship. It's like he has this idea and he gets there right at the edge and then he starts like thinking twice about it. Like it's funny too. He's like, what am I doing? I didn't even vote for this guy. Yeah. Geez, I didn't even vote for this guy. Do I really want to do this? He meets a guy, bartender. Bartender gives him good advice, saying like, he tries to tell the bartender like, I'm writing a science fiction story about a guy that gets all this power, and he's thinking about telling the government. The government's like, bartender's like, yeah, let me tell you how that story ends. The government runs all kinds of tests on him because they don't believe him. And when they finally determine that he does have this power, they kill him in his sleep. And he's like, why would they do that? He's like, because they don't want anybody more powerful than them. He's like, okay, well, that solves that. I'm not going to do that. And then he goes back to visit his girlfriend with the kids, and the babysitter's there. The babysitter's like, hey, come in and watch TV with me. And he's like, I better not. She's 17. Again, bringing that up. So he kind of waits around for her to come back, and she's been on a date. And you don't blame her, and he doesn't blame her. He's not even really mad at her because he knows that he's been messing around with Debbie. So you've got a lot of like soap opera drama going on with it. He hears some screams, decides to like step into the store, and he's not really sure what's going on. This lady's like, I don't know, I'm just scared. I want to go. And then there's this lady just walking out, and he's like, oh, he wants to ask her what's going on. He's like, I got to get out of here. Got to run. And he's like, no, that's crazy. There's no reason, nothing to run away from. Just a tired-looking woman. So something weird's going on there where they're having emotions. But he follows her back to this camp, and we meet 3 other superpowered people with no explanation of how they got their powers or anything. He just kind of runs up on them. She obviously has the ability to make people feel fear and distrust and just want to get away. And this guy makes other people ragey, and this guy is just kind of super strong. And so first she tries to use her powers. When he approaches him, first she tries to use her powers to make him just want to leave. But he resists it. He feels it, but he resists it. And so instead, this guy decides to make this guy just really angry. And they kind of go at it. And really, he should kick his butt. But I think the woman is like the woman making him have the self-doubt is enough for him to drop his guard just enough to get knocked out. So then when he wakes up, they're gone. And he's mad that they got away. So again, we have some nice intrigue here as to what's happening. Issue 4 is still pretty interesting. So I'm pretty into the series, although I think it's starting to meander. We've had 2 issues in a row. Well, he hasn't even been in his bland costume in the past 2 issues. And we're getting a lot of repetitiveness of, he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know what to do. It's like, okay, we're on issue 4. We should start to figure that out at this point. All right, this is the last issue I have, number 5. Let me go back on these covers again for a second. This cover, maybe it's just the costume, not super exciting. Fighting generic planes, not super exciting. Compared to what else was on the shelf at the time. Like, to me, this just does not jump out. If this was on like a spinner rack or something, that would not break out. This would not break out. Again, you just have like a bunch of people wearing plain clothes, and yeah, trees hitting him. So that might intrigue you some. This one has some better color usage on it. It pops a little bit more. I can't say I'm in love with the drawing, though. He's just breaking a gun. It's so indescript. Like, it's hard to really say it's captivating. Like, would you buy this over a Spider-Man or an X-Men or a Batman or even a Superman, which I guess the John Byrne Superman would have been coming out about that this time? Would you have bought this book over any of that? Probably not, at least not based off the cover. So we still got John Romita Jr., Al Williamson. I think the art is very crisp and clean. It's you can tell it's John Romita Jr. I like John Romita Jr. Some people don't. That's kind of an appealing thing. So her hair is definitely tamed down from what it was. She comes in. She gives him a gift. It's his birthday. And they go off into the other room again. Now she shows up again in her tank top and panties. They are obviously having sex. Even though he has this other girlfriend. He's taking her to some other party, but he wants to swing by his parents' house. And they throw him a surprise party where his girlfriend with the kids is there. So Debbie hides. They have a discussion, too, about where their relationship stands and how they're seeing other people. She's like, I know you don't want to be tied down, but I really like you. So all these women just throwing themselves at him all the time. which I guess he reminds me of I don't know the actor's name, but the guy from Karate Kid, the bad guy in it. Well, the guy that was meant to be the bad guy. Anyway, it turns out Debbie was just like hiding in the floorboard for the whole like hour and a half or whatever that he was at the party. That is just like how into it. But here he actually starts the show. He's like, man, that's too much devotion. Uh, it's not right. It's not good. You let me use you way too much. And what do? I take advantage. Nice. You have to get away from me for your sake. So I found that interesting. So he's feeling some guilt about how he handles her. It's like he likes her, but he also talks about how she's not very bright a lot. So it's like he doesn't really want to be with her as like his one and only girlfriend, but he likes the attention. So his other friends, this is a new friend we're meeting for the first time. He's working on a car. It's like, hey, come to this party, and I'm going to work on my car while we're while we're there. And they talk about relationships, and he basically says, "Yeah, I cheat on my wife all the time. Like she's settled down. I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, I like Debbie and everything, but he's like, she's a bimbo like my wife." Yeah, I mean, this dude is something else. And he's under the car. He fixes the bumper for him. He's like, I can't tell you, trade secret there. Get another quick recap of what was going on, like the first issue. That's a Jim Shooter staple of retell the origin, tell what's going on, especially early on in a series with new characters and stuff. I mean, that is kind of important. It probably took me to the third issue to remember his name was Ken, though. He takes off into the ocean, pops up in California, where there's a beautiful blonde in a bikini. He's like, yeah, come on up to my house. And then they're sitting on the bed, and she's like, are you okay? He's like, just got a lot on my mind. She's like, well, when you get over her, look me up, please. Again, women just throwing themselves at him. He comes back to his house. He's like looking through the paper. Goes to visit the girlfriend again. That might be the babysitter, actually. Okay, that's the babysitter going home. And now he's finally saying, yeah, she seemed so sexy to me that first time I saw her in the tube top, but she just looks like a kid. So in this issue, he's kind of coming to terms with like he wants to marry the girl with the kids. But he goes in and he sees she's on a date, and the guy's like kissing her and stuff, and he gets mad. He doesn't go in. You think he's gonna like go in and break it up. He's like, no, I'm gonna win her back the right way. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go take care of the woman from before in the car that faked the makeup bruise and stuff. So he goes to take them on, but this time he's smart about it. He stakes out, he wears the mask, stakes out from around, sees them, which they're kind of dumb. They've already seen him flying and stuff. They know he can do this stuff. So it turns out they're part of like a terrorist cell for Libyan. They mention Gaddafi, who was the big bad of geopolitical Middle Eastern world of the 1980s. He goes and first he exposes them. He doesn't really confront them. He doesn't go in and like, smash the door in and do stuff. Instead, he like opens the trunk of their car where they have a bunch of weapons and stuff, and then makes an anonymous tip for the police to come get them. And they come and bust them. And then he flies over to Libya and attacks one of their military bases. And it's like, tell Gaddafi not to come looking for me. So you got a pretty good bit of action here. There, he tells the guy. Of course, he speaks back in Arabic. Probably doesn't understand him at all. But he's like, hopefully he gets the message across. Comes back. Tells Barb he wants to tell her something important. He wants to tell her about his powers. Goes to see Debbie to break it off with her. And she just falls apart. And is like, you can have another girlfriend. You can even get married and move in with her, but just please come see me some. You've got to, or else I'm not going to be able to live without you. And he is just kind of like, oh my gosh, okay. So then he drives away thinking the whole time, like, man, I'm going to have to like slowly ease it off with her to like let her down easy, I guess. And I mean, it's quite the conundrum. He goes over to Barb's. Kid's knocked over a family heirloom. She's upset. But he goes ahead and asks her to marry him anyway. And she's like, yeah, I want to, while the kids are all screaming upstairs and causing a commotion. It's an interesting proposal situation with kids going off in the background. He's like, I want to marry you. She says yes. And then he's sitting there thinking for a minute. For some reason, she said, so you wanted to tell me something else. He was going to tell her about the powers, and he decides not to for some reason. And then it says, next, the old man returns. Now I'm kind of upset that I don't have number 6. I want to know what happens. So I don't know that I'll track it down or go much further with this. If I see them, I may pick them up. If I see number 6, I'll probably pick up number 6 and see where that goes. I don't know that if I see like number 12, that I'll just pick up number 12 and then try to fill in the gap. But if I run across number 6, just kind of out, I may go ahead and grab it. But this is a decent start to this new universe. But I do see how this is not as exciting or catch on as much as like what was just going on with Marvel at the time, even though Marvel was 20 years old. I want to find that. So that's the start of the new universe. The next one I'm going to look at is going to be the Spitfire series that started in October, and then the rest of them launched in November. So we'll see how the universe kind of ties together from them. But until then, make sure to always read your comics.